We humans are ever-changing by nature. This isn't inherently a bad thing. If anything, it shows that we need an anchor. Jeremiah 17:5-9 paints a picture of two different kinds of hearts. One that's tethered to God, the other is not. We often reach for verse 9 when we're talking about our emotional state. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? But the passage is bigger than a warning about our feelings. It's speaking about trust. It begins with the person who trusts in mankind and makes his flesh his strength. Then just a few verses later, we get the contrast. Blessed is the man that trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. One heart is rooted in something outside itself. The other has made itself the foundation. Where we place our trust shapes the life that grows from us. Scripture gives us plenty of stories that show us what happens when our heart begins taking direction from itself. Abraham grew impatient with God's promise. Samson repeatedly placed his allegiance in what he desired rather than what God instructed. And Adam and Eve trusted their own interpretation of what was good rather than the word God already gave them. The details are different, but the pattern is the same. When the heart becomes untethered, the life that flows from it reflects that, like a mirror. Don't get me wrong. Trusting yourself is important. God gave us the ability to make decisions and the wisdom to make good ones. But there's a subtle difference between trusting yourself and believing yourself to be the final authority. We change, but God doesn't. Paul says it plainly. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. 1 Corinthians 13:9. This is part of being human. Having the humility to admit what I know today is not everything there is to know. Our vantage point is incomplete. And as long as we're wrapped in earth elements, we are looking through a window rather than seeing the whole house. So how could I trust myself as the foundation of a house I cannot perceive fully? We weren't meant to see everything from where we stand. We don't know the end of our story, no matter how hard we try to control it. And I understand why we try to control it. There's something comforting about believing we can figure it out. To anticipate every possible outcome and stay 3 steps ahead of disappointment gives us a sense of safety. I've experienced the strange fruit of an untethered life. There were seasons where I would rely so heavily on myself that I didn't allow myself room for error. I was anxious, critical, and overly concerned with getting things right. I had a false sense of freedom masking control. I was quick to judge myself for mistakes and judged others even quicker. I didn't understand the human experience or the human heart, much less my own. I wanted certainty from a life that can only offer mystery. I believed God was there. I just didn't know how to trust him. I didn't realize that surrender and self-reliance can't exist together. Sometimes we hold on to control because we don't know what will be left of us when we finally let go. So we stay until the weight becomes too heavy or the thing we're using to keep ourselves safe becomes the thing keeping us from moving. When I decided to trust God more than I trust myself, I began to experience the fullness of my humanity, not just the beautiful parts. The fear, the contradiction, all of it. I began to understand why Jeremiah spoke so seriously about the heart. There's a kind of dependence that diminishes us. Then there is a kind that restores us. The kind that restores us doesn't ask us to abandon self-awareness, wisdom, or responsibility. Something powerful happened when I finally tethered my heart to Jesus. I became more honest about how trusting myself in this sea of life without an anchor inevitably makes me unprepared for the storm. Dependence makes room. I think this is one reason Jesus sent his disciples out 2 by 2. He could have sent them alone. Instead, he gave them one another. They went without knowing exactly what would happen. This matters because God doesn't only teach us dependence on him in our secret place. He also teaches us dependence on him through people. He gives us opportunities to lean into the wise counsel, to be supported, and to admit that we don't have all the answers. All I'm saying is, trust placed anywhere else but in God is sinking sand. Matthew 7:24-27. You are allowed to make choices, exercise wisdom, dream, wander, create. However, there's a difference between being free to wander and having nowhere to return to. And I think for a long time, I confused the two. Being rooted was never about becoming less free. It was about finally knowing where freedom could safely take me and where I could always return. Thank you for sitting with me beneath the flowers. If my writing has ever encouraged you and you'd like to support the time, thought, and intention that goes into creating pieces like this, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. Every contribution helps tend this little corner of the internet where faith, art, and honest storytelling continue to bloom. I'll write to you again soon. Always love, Sheree.